Well, thanks everybody. Ironically enough, this is about technology. It's technology, right? It's always the way it goes. Thanks for being here today. We don't have anybody online right now, but Bill here will be monitoring that in case you do. I'm Sherry Lucarelli, and I was asked to facilitate a session on user expectation. So what this isn't is a big lecture. What this is a time to hear from high school teachers and then think about our practice here. So to give you a little background on who I am, in case some of you don't know who I am, I'm currently professor of education and I'm chair of graduate education programs at St. Scholastica. And I have a personal research interest in educational technology, online learning, all of those good things. But I also teach courses in our Master of Ed program where I actually work with lots of high school and elementary school teachers. And of course, we're working to prepare teachers for K-12. This is a different way of thinking about it. So I kind of know what's going on there, but it's their chance to kind of tell us what's going on in their world and how our students coming in. And we have a few guest speakers, but before we start, so I feel like not only is this something I care about, but it's really personal for me. This is a granddaughter of mine. She's going into kindergarten this year. And if you notice, her graduating class is on her t-shirt. 2030, and that sort of frightens me in a bunch of ways. I don't want to think about it too much. But if you think about it, in like 2031, she could potentially be a student here. And I'm thinking about her lifespan in K-12 and the ways in which she's using technology even now. I watch her. I mean, some of you obviously must have children in your lives and you watch the way they use technology at home. But more importantly, what are they doing even when they get to school? So this is Miss Hattie. Hoping I can volunteer this year. So again, I introduced myself, but I would like to, we have a guest speaker here today. I'm going to have him introduce himself, and then I'll talk about our other two guest speakers.
Yeah, I'm Chris Evable. I'm a science teacher in ESCO. I've been there about 20 years now. I'm also a technology facility. And I guess what I am able to bring is just 3 years now of experience in a one-to-one district. We just moved to iPads 3 years ago, so this is our 4th year, so we've got some experience under our legs and some growing pains and things like that. But I'm ready to share or answer questions on my experience in the classroom with technology. What a lot of my kids are coming out of places like this with,
So great that Chris is here, because this is a busy week for them too. So I'm really grateful you're here, Chris. And Chris just got back from a trip out west. We have two folks on video because their days started today. Mike Pottis is a tech integration specialist from Hermantown. We were able to capture some video of him. And Amber Gilbert is an English teacher at Superior High School. And she also starts her day today. So they actually came in and did some video with the tech staff here. Just before we get started, I just thought these are just some things I think about a lot. Like, change really has to be the new normal. Technology is changing at exponential rates. And I always feel like it's a little bit like our Duluth weather. Like, you feel like you've just learned something, and then things are changing. Even our new webinar software, which is Zoom, that's a brand new thing for all of us. So, even if you like it better, there's some time involved in making that switch. And I don't know if you're like me, but some of you in this room might even remember this sound. Do you remember this? It's such a lovely sound, isn't it? So that was like my first exposure. No, it actually isn't my first exposure to the internet. I used to in high school, I was on the GopherNet or something. I didn't know it was the internet at that time, but I now look back and realize that's what it was. But we have students coming to us who have never even heard that sound. If you think about it, right? I mean, I used to dial up to get on the internet and go do some dishes, and then I'd come back and something had been loaded. So I just think it's important to think about the ways in which our students are coming to us, and that there is a lot of change going on. And that means we may have to think about our own practice. So the purpose of this session is really to build more awareness, although a lot of you are probably aware of these changes, but it might be really wonderful to hear exactly specifically what teachers are doing. Maybe gather some feedback from all of you. Think about some things. Jane would like to know what would be most helpful for people after hearing from this session. She's thinking of maybe people want to have a user group or whatever, but you might have some ideas about that. And then to think about these as strengths that students are bringing to us, and how can we capitalize on those things. So I like to think of this as bridges. You know, high school kids are coming to us, we're bridging that, you know, they come to us, well, what can we do to think about supporting them in the next phase of their careers? You know, hopefully we're helping them with those strengths and expanding on those strengths and pushing them forward with more strengths in terms of, obviously this is a technology workshop. There's lots of ways we're building on those strengths, but specifically technology use is what I'm thinking about. This is just how it feels to me. So I love technology, and this is how I feel sometimes when I think about, even this year I'm gearing up to teach a class in technology. And I'm always thinking, you know, do my students know more than me? Yes, they probably do. How can I help them? And sometimes I feel like I'm a little underwater, but just thinking about the ways in which folks are using technology. It's helpful to know too that a lot of our local schools have initiatives around this. So this is from ESCO. I grabbed a screenshot. They have a digital initiative, which Chris will talk about more. This is Hermantown. They're now 1-to-1. And so these are local districts, and that's where we're pulling students from. So it's important to know they are experiencing technology in their learning. So I thought what we would do is listen. This is Mike Pottis, and I thought we'd listen to about the first 6 minutes of his talk. And if you could maybe listen for themes you hear, does it spark, maybe you're already doing things in your classroom that would align with Mike's ideas. And so we're gonna go and listen to Mike.
My name is Mike Pottis, and I was a teacher, high school English teacher for 19 years, but the last 2 years in Hermantown, I have worked as a tech integration specialist, which is kind of a fancier title for the guy who teaches the teachers how to integrate technology into their classroom. But at my heart, I'm a teacher, and an English teacher at that. So in Hermantown, our technology environment, so I work 5 through 12, so I can speak to that, but our elementary schools is catching up. But 5 through 12, starting this year, every classroom will have a cart of Chromebooks. So we're not 1-to-1, the kids don't take them home. But when they walk in the door, it depends on the teacher. They're either sitting out or they're in the cart. The students have instant access to technology in a Chromebook. So basically they're online and working with the digital tools that we supply to them through the Google environment when they come in the door. So not every teacher uses them every day. That's rare, but most teachers use them heavily. It'd be easy to say 3 times a day. I guess it just depends on the teacher and the activity that they're doing, but this is across the board. So from social studies to science to English to languages to all the electives, even our Phi Ed teachers, physical education teachers are finding ways to integrate technology into their classrooms. So our students are immersed in it every day and in every class. Most of those interactions, most of those are to create collaboration. And so our students are used to digitally working with both their peers and their teachers. And that goes beyond just the day. So our students, it's not unheard of if you can look on like a Google Doc and look at when they've worked. We have students that live, miles apart that are working on something together at 10 o'clock at night. And then we have students that are sending emails to us or checking items because we can see pretty consistently. And so one of the big pushes at Hermantown is that collaboration. It's one of the skills that we think our students need. And so they're used to working in groups, but not like it used to be, where one person could dominate and then the work would be shifted off. There's ways now digitally to make collaboration true collaboration. And our students are really used to it. And it's odd for them when it doesn't happen. And you can name a subject. Obviously, as an English teacher, the peer editing of papers, that was no-brainer. But our science teachers are doing it. Our math teachers are doing it. Students are working in groups. It's not uncommon to walk by a Hermantown teacher's classroom now and see less lecture and more small group work and a teacher circulating through those groups. There's still some lecture, but it's less and less, and it's much more of the students just doing the work collaboratively with each other with a variety of tools that we give them. How has it affected our students' learning? it's put the work, we feel, back onto the students. It's not so much us just delivering the information. We've tried to go to great lengths to force students to critical thinkers to think for themselves. And teachers have become more guides as opposed to the person up front just delivering the information. And part of that is we found out that information's out there and students will go find it. I mean, it's a digital world, so our curriculums are out there. And so we found that it became more about guiding them through it and teaching some soft skills. Not obviously, it's important to teach all of the requirements of a subject, but some of the soft skills, people call it, of collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, because that's what's needed. And if you read anything online and you read any of the research, people can be taught whatever you need them to in a job, but some of those skills haven't been spoken to, weren't really valued in public education. And they are the new skills of the 21st century. And so at first, you would think students would love it, but it took them a while to get used to it. At times, they kind of prefer to just sit and have information delivered to them. But over time, it's become the new norm. And so it's flipped. It used to be just lecture and tell us, but now they've moved beyond that. And lecture all the time has become difficult. And it's become much more of a hands-on, collaborative, teacher guiding learning situation. And what our teachers found is they've gotten away from being mass deliverers of information and have become teachers again, where they get to work with small groups. And those groups sometimes are designed by the teachers or sometimes find themselves. I guess it depends on the teacher and how they want to do it. We're a Google school, so our students are really used to all of those tools. And if you know anything about the Google platform, it's built for collaboration. That's the idea behind it. It's built for immediate feedback. It's built for functionality that is.
Okay, so that's about 5 minutes from Mike. And what I was wondering if people could, I thought what I'd like to do is, as we listen to some of these thoughts, is to think now about any themes you hear, strengths, ideas, and you might already be doing something, so you might be seeing things right now that resonate with you based on life, or maybe you don't feel that way. And I guess this is not an opportunity to have anybody feel shamed or anything. It's like, what does it make you think about, I guess, is what I'd like to ask you. So maybe just for 5 minutes, could you just talk at your table, and maybe if you don't want to, could you join that table just for this part of it? And if somebody has a computer, I actually have a Google Doc, which I'll put in the chat window. And if you need the address for the Zoom window, you all have editing access to this. And if we could capture some of these ideas, that would be great. So I don't know if you have access to the Zoom. Maybe each table has that. And I'm going to put this in the chat window. If I can find it here. Oh. But maybe you can just start talking right now about those ideas. Is there anything that Mike said? What themes do you hear? What ideas do you hear? What are you already doing you think can build on that? What makes you feel stressed? If there's anything. Maybe nothing. Maybe you're like, oh, that's totally great. Okay, so I'm going to share this Google Doc with everybody in the chat if I can. There we go. So I just shared the Google Doc in the chat window. And we'll just give about 5 minutes. I'm going to run to the restroom. And the Google Doc's in the chat window.
Yeah. Let's see if I missed anyone.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And you all should have editing rights, so. Okay. I just thought we'll have some collaborative notes here and I can share. We've got about 5 minutes or so, so, you know, these are questions I provided, but if you have other things that come to mind, please add them at the bottom of the document. It could be something that I have not put on here, something that comes out of your conversation.
Just try it. Yeah. I'm not gonna break something. Yeah. Hi. Welcome. Well, I don't know that we're really following this prompt. We're just kind of using your science teacher. Well, I'm not sure we have the audio. I'm not sure we have the audio thing, right? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think probably not thinking that through quite right. You know, so like it's probably using the microphone like the laptop. Sure. His chat was that there's those users up there would probably actively learning about themselves often, and they not only learn, so they're used to the teacher lecture. So I emphasize that it really hasn't been. I try to get away from lecturing just much resistance. I bet I can figure it out with a little research. Oh, for real? Yes. Well, Benedictine funeral, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay, wonderful. That's
Lunch,
nice. Thanks.
welcoming remarks, roundtable discussions.
Nice, perfect. Thank you. Was it on there?
It is. I use all resources at my disposal.
Nothing wrong with it.
So how do we do it? In here, one of my concerns are we have students that have a place where are maybe not as used to that sort of study. So they're going to come in, but then at the same time, it's the same right? So where should that transition come from? Is it us that needs to adapt, or what's well, I mean, just in college, I think it depends.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon was the first time I'd ever been this small in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like.
You're doing great. I've used it more than you, but I'm still like,
Well, that's why I was.
I've used it all summer.
Yeah, that's why I was grateful to be working with you because
Oh.
you know, like you're like the expert.
Well,
So I
no,
knew that.
no, I'm not the expert.
So I guess that's the question.
I don't feel like the expert.
guess I know it.
So about 30 seconds, and I think we'll switch gears here.
They're sitting at a table together. Do they have, do the skills transfer at all?
So I'm gonna bring our group back because we're gonna hear from another teacher. Thank you so much for capturing your ideas. Just quickly, could somebody share just from each table just one little idea that bubbled up and I was eavesdropping? Maybe your group could just share something.
You just said. As I'm not in the classroom within enrollment management, one of the things that struck me out of this is how collaboration came up so much. How can we, from an admissions perspective, tap into that collaboration mindset because we've been looking at it specifically as trying to recruit the student and the family to the single direction and not really thinking about how we get them to collaborate with their peers to potentially get more of a group together.
How about from this group? Any, just a thought or two? I mean, it's sort of.
We wrote some stuff there, but just the idea that that teacher said that they were really used to not being lectured at, really used to active learning strategies. But I find I still face resistance in the classroom if I don't lecture.
Yeah.
And I try more practice.
That's really interesting.
I want to take a kind of a similar.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that at a college setting, we're still very lecture heavy.
Yeah.
And so then there's that idea that students are coming out of high school not necessarily prepared to handle that style.
Yeah.
So I think at a collegiate level, we're like, they need to change what they're doing. But then there's the other perspective where maybe we need to change what we're doing.
Right. And there isn't really a good answer.
Yeah.
I think mostly what we need to be aware of is what's our assumption about the ways in which students are coming to us.
Yeah.
And it could be in some districts, they wouldn't want to hear a lot of lecture, but it could be in some districts, it's like anything with a mix of students. So I think more importantly, we're just sort of asking those questions. So this is Amber. What I'm happy about today is we've got Mike Pottis, who serves as a tech integration specialist. Amber is sort of a humanities perspective, and Chris is going to provide that science perspective. And we're not going to hear, I'm going to have to skip around in Amber's, we just have recorded too much. But Amber speaks about Google Classroom. If you don't know, Google Classroom is just a learning management system. So if you hear Google Classroom, we could take those same ideas and think about them like Blackboard. Okay, so we'll hear from Amber.
Okay, hello, my name is Amber Goodspeed-Gilbert, and I'm actually an alum of the College of St. Scholastica. I graduated in 2008, and I am currently an English teacher at Superior High School. I teach English, American literature, I teach creative writing, and I teach theater. And I have been there now for 8 years, so this year will be my 9th year teaching at Superior. Let's see, within the last 4 years, we have moved now completely to one-to-one for all students, and all students now have their own laptop that they use and they carry around with them every day, and we use them all the time in all of my different classes, of course. We also use exclusively Google Docs and Google Classroom. Google Docs exclusively in my classroom because I find it to be the best tool, which I'll explain a little bit more about later. But Google Classroom is what we use exclusively in Superior. It is where I keep all of my classes have their own Google Classroom. It's their own, each individual hour. So my first hour class.
I'm going to skip around through Amber's. I've timestamped some things I want to highlight because I'm going to go to this point here. She's talking now about how she uses Google Docs specifically.
Example of that. So this is an example of student work. So this is a paper that was submitted, a final paper on Edgar Allan Poe, was submitted to me, and because this draft was a final draft, it doesn't have any of my suggestions on it anymore, but I just added a little one that's an example on the right-hand side of the screen to show you what that looks like. But up here, there's like this adding a suggestion, so I would be able to add suggestions for students or add comments, which then they can go in and look at. They can accept the suggestion. They can respond to me in a reply, ask me additional questions about why did I tell them to change this word, or why did I tell them to do this. They can ask me directly on here. What I have noticed as an English teacher is that my students are much more receptive to suggestions on their papers if it is through Google Docs. They pretty much are guaranteed to at least read what I've put down, whereas in the past when I would give them, they would turn in a draft or a paper and I would write suggestions, most likely they weren't even looking at it. So when I do it on Google Docs, I'm pretty much guaranteed that they're going to at least read what I wrote. And the other nice thing about this is that if they turn in a draft, their final draft or another draft, and they haven't made changes, I know because I can go back and look at the evidence of when the changes were made and what changes were made. So if they turn in a paper, I can say, you didn't make any changes. I'm not going to look at this until you make changes. So that's been really a lot.
I'm now going to fast forward to where she talks about research. So she talks about research. As an English teacher, she has to do a lot of that.
This has led, I think one of the things that I've had to change about my teaching is that I have to teach my students how to do research. And because there is so much information on the internet everywhere, I've really had to be more conscious of how do I teach my students to find sources that are reliable sources. That we live kind of in a clickbait kind of world where students have access to any kind of information that's going to fit the narrative that they want it to fit. And so forcing my students to use their computers, using even their phones to research effectively is a challenge. And it's a good challenge, but it is definitely something that I wasn't dealing with my first year of teaching because we didn't have one-to-one computers, and cell phones were all over the place. But I think there's been a really big transition in education where we're trying not to fight the battle of never using our phones and keeping them put away every moment they're in the room, but instead of looking at it as a tool that can help to guide inquiry and guide research.
And there's one last piece I'm going to have you listen to before we discuss. And this time she talks about the use of online discussion forums. So she's not teaching online, she's teaching a face-to-face. All of her courses are face-to-face. But she talks about how she uses online forum with her face-to-face classes. So we'll start here. And this will be the last segment, and then we'll discuss.
In Google Classroom is the discussion forum, and it kind of looks like over here. I don't think I have one that's recent, but I can create a question on Google Classroom, and then I'll ask a question, a discussion question, and then I'll make it so that students can reply to each other, and they can edit their answers if they wish they want to. I can change the way I can do multiple choice if I want to, but normally I do short answer. I have used multiple choice as a very short and quick post-class assessment, like a really quick formative assessment. It's a really good way of doing that. And students tend to enjoy it, and they tend to respond pretty well to those kinds of things. But one of the ways that I like to use this question is I will post a question. I'll have students take out their computers and I'll have them look at the question, and then I hook my own computer up to the projector and project the discussion happening on the board. Students can see as responses to the questions are popping up, they can see them happening on the board and in front of them, of course. But what is nice is that I try not to respond too much when these online discussions are happening, because I want the students to be the ones who are responding to each other. But when I do read them and look at them, they know that I am doing it because they can see me doing it on the board. They can watch me as I'm reading responses and how I'm responding to them. What I find with these kinds of online forum-based discussions is that I can ask anything that's pertaining to my class, and I will have like 90% of them are going to respond in a really thoughtful way. You're always going to have kids who are dismissive in high school, but most of the kids are responding thoughtfully. They, even the students who are not vocal at all in the classroom or are maybe feel intimidated. Like last year I had a class where I had 2 girls and 21 boys in a class, and those girls never said a word. They never talked because they were intimidated by some of the boys who were in there were just very vocal. And the online forum was a way for those girls and anyone else in the class who was not as vocal to feel comfortable responding. And it's really amazing as a teacher to see a student in your room who really is engaged, but perhaps doesn't really respond to questions or doesn't.
Okay, so Amber talked about several things. Using Google Docs to get feedback. She talked about online forum and how that was effective for her. She knew the people list. And I can't remember that other thing. Okay. Right. Research. Thank you. Research. Thank you. So Monica, if you could just take 5 minutes now and in similar fashion talk about what you heard, and then what builds on what Mike shared. If you see similarities, there are differences. Amber and Mike don't know each other at all. They're in totally different settings, so maybe there are similarities with us. So anyway, you can take about 5 minutes and talk about that. And then Chris is going to share. Okay.
Maybe it doesn't look like they see it.
I like that. Our students like that.
Yeah. Not so much the same, but at least,
And they always have the version stress. I'm sorry, versions of it.
you know there's a difference.
Otherwise, it's just but yeah, process has just separated. It makes sense. I think this gets to collaboration. In case that this gets to collaboration.
She's driving down. It's so fun. Oh, it's
It's crazy.
But what I found is it was, and then you're always in the group, and it's hard to share the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
never worked.
a lot of times, love to
Call them and they work.
so much drawing.
Share it.
Straighten out, right? it's not very conducive to accepting love, right? Like students need to be engaged that remains, at least in everything that I've experienced, that remains better done. That's a paper and eraser. We've tried, like, let's sketch on two resolutions on there. Much harder to like look over somebody's shoulder at the output of what they're doing and find their position. Where each decision is like, this is actually, it's like chicken scratch for everybody that's happening. And so I would love to see,
You know, rather than.
well, sure, there's still, that feels like a digital, just as like you're still doing it all.
I thought they were wanting to share with their,
No.
in this case, you're fine.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about like the whole notion of like paperless, I would love to, but
For your, just reminds you so far. And there you go.
But I find that.
it's frustrating.
They, this is not a substitute for the that not built in your part to that others. But I really want them to do that.
You know, I got some challenges for
Or if you put it, you know, she made that point.
even if you do it for trying to
Everybody in the group, I mean, that's the thing about it. They're all in
you know, I noticed he lost the word in the traditional hero you're saying something versus it's funny, there's a one. So I think it's because they're transitioning from but otherwise
About 20 seconds, then we'll have Chris share.
right, yeah. So I've tried to have them there's still a couple. So more of them are, you know how to do that, how to scan it.
Yeah, that's good. And just looking at it. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have Chris set up. He's gonna share his screen while we maybe do a whip around. I guess I'll start for what struck me from Amber's little presentation, because I've experienced this myself. I was asked to teach Dignitas a few years ago, and honestly, I remember when I got hired here, I went from elementary school working with sophomores in college, and sophomores are very different from my experience with freshmen. So all of you that are teaching freshmen, I bow down to you. I learned a lot, have a lot of respect for you, because I'm a fairly discussion-based teacher. I know people talk. I didn't know what to do. So I've been an online teacher or blended, so I started bringing in Blackboard and having online discussion, and there I learned about my students. They would, even though we were meeting face-to-face, I required them to do a weekly post on something, and I'm like, and I was sort of hitting myself, like, did I not, because I thought, okay, here she had 23 students, 2 were girls, and people can feel that way lots of people. That for me resonated, so I don't know.
I guess that's
Do you
the
mind table
microphone.
sharing again? Do you have something here about that for you? You could share?
It does seem, well, I don't work with freshmen, so I don't have that right experience, but it does seem that over the last couple of years that when they get to me at least, they understands that there's a difference. And so that's been nice. We have, in our 2 pre-licensure nursing programs, we've got books, exercise, scanning and submitting assignments. So we're not completely different.
That's good though, you're seeing that there's different stories. Yeah. How about from here, anyone want to just share?
From the notes that I took from our conversation, it's being more diligent about asking students to share their Google Docs from the class, because then maybe collaborate with others in those, asking for final results in a Word doc, and just doing more of the work with them in docs, whether it's the documents themselves or even setting up presentation spaces for them to do their slides in or preparing later on, rather than dealing with the hassle of them not getting all the permissions and sharing the process.
And I think the other important piece is that you can actually see the read feedback and maybe respond more to your feedback.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge challenge.
It is.
So just start, they don't need feedback.
And you think about all the time you spend as an extra.
So you want to strangle them.
Well, the other aha about this is, especially if you're online and you're working in small groups and they can see everything within the group, everything. I mean, it's really a learning environment. Their other students are seeing your feedback to the students as well. And so you're reinforcing some of the same things over and over and over about what the expectation is.
Very good point. Well, Chris is here in person, which is fabulous, and he's going to share what he does.
Yeah, so real quickly again, ESCO is 3 years ago, so this is our 4th year now. We went number 1, 4th through 12. So our primary grades, we all get devices. 4th on all that devices. We decided on the iPad. I'm really happy with the decision. There's another whole discussion of device, but anyway, a lot of tools. I'm as a science teacher in the high school level, 7th grade. This is like the best tool I could have. All the iPad, camera, all the stuff that comes with it. But we also use our learning management systems in the classroom. We use a lot of Google. It's all over the place, collaborating and documents and things like that. But to kind of deliver and house our content like Blackboard, we use Canvas. So Canvas is our learning management system. This is just my Canvas page. Canvas page like this with all the courses, and look on that to access.
I know. I was intrigued. That looked pretty interesting.
Yeah, I have. This is like my landing page. So just like in Blackboard, too, it's structures and organizations, a guide, and channel, and hopefully it's intuitive, so it's easy to figure out. Our students obviously know that. So anyway, our students at ESCO are so they should be able to just flow right into a college environment where learning management systems are more readily available. But just going back, a few of the other tools, and I'll shut up here a little bit, just let you guys ask questions, but I'll try to just frame our experience here. So we've got our learning management system, we've got our device, 4 through 12. So kids are, unlike Hermantown, kids are taking this home, so they have this 24-hour opportunity. And what I think we didn't do as well as we could have at our age is maybe train the parents. Okay, now you're getting all these devices at your house. And so some parents, they already had all those devices, so it's nothing new. But for others, it's a new deal. And we have pretty good connectivity in our population, but we still have connectivity. So, take it to school and that. But so So sometimes we still have to remind them, download what you need here at school, so you have it on your device. But I thought we could have done a little better on family things, you know, and screen time, you know, just offer suggestions. But like kind of was mentioned here, this is a collaboration is happening in our school walls. Still have our 7:30 day. Still have a little bit of lecture and we have group time and stuff like that, but collaboration, classroom, and it's kind of cool. Sometimes we'll have projects where it doesn't have to be somebody in the class that you're in, somebody in another class, another hour, you know, that they work with. So that's kind of neat. We're not a Google school, but we use Google. So forms, most of you probably use Google Forms. We're using Google Forms all the time. So I just got just endless forms. You know, I'm using Google Forms all the time. So and kids are starting to create them. For some of the research projects, we're grab information, creating their own Google Forms now, and submitting those. Out there. So Google is used quite a bit in our school, in our largest classroom. So collaboration, Google, having our those teachers edit, writing comments in like you saw from Superior. Just really a common thing. You know, with devices too, you know, our kids, right, cases, they've got a lot of tools for simulation, physics. There's a lot of simulation that is accessible to us. So they're, well, we're doing a lot too. You know, we're a science teacher. I like doing stuff, and so we use simulations and have simulation accessible that also our classroom. From a science perspective, one of the tools that I'm expecting, since we have it right in my hands, like data spreadsheets, and graph, and spitting out visual our data. So that's a my class. I'm pretty excited about the 3 years. Kids know how to go to YouTube and this and that, but kids are part of the creation a little bit more. Kids have been creating videos and talking about it for a long, long time, but they're doing it with a little more purpose, maybe sometimes. So they're it's just part of their life is creating, putting out there, or accessing it. And we're talking about one of the important skills on our end, and certainly skill at your end. It's good stuff. There's so much stuff out there. It's good. It's appropriate. Evaluated. We're trying to do that more and more. Or they know what junk is. Well, but there's just all kinds of tools. I like mapping a lot, so there's a lot of great spatial stuff. A lot of, but you know, if we can take a lot of our data, our kids can get data points, and we can submit those data points. So we can put it on a map. I created a little lesson. Graphics I'm showing up. I created a little lesson about the sulfide mine up there. So I put a few different layers on here and created a little lesson. And kids were prompted kind of through before we had a visit by somebody that was going to talk about it. And so there's so many great tools that all this stuff. That's just kind of a quick overview.
Talk a little bit, how do you do labs different with all your science?
Well, let me.
Well, Chris is opening up. I think we won't have time to talk about this today, but I think it would be good for us to think about we think about bridges, where kids are coming to us, our responsibility to help students to go to the next phase. We're not going to answer that today, but I guess I would ask you to just be thinking about who should we be talking to make sure we're bridging. And depending on where we're at. We kind of know in school that we're supposed to be preparing teachers to do what you're doing, you know. I mean, we have the mandate, but it could be in nursing, it's different than it is in business. You know, whatever, I don't know.
And I was mentioning this table
Yeah.
too, I mean, this is what are we doing at our level for you to be aware of, but same thing, what are you doing that you guys to do that?
Yeah.
So it's
Just
two-way
dialogue,
street,
but
right,
yeah,
right.
exactly.
But going back to your point right here, this is, because we have spreadsheets right now. I deliver a lot of my labs right to the spreadsheet. So you'll notice my tabs across the board. This is a behavior lab that we did. And so the first tab is my instructions. Second tab is our instrument that we're going to use for critical instruments. So we want to bring in chicken, watch. Whether they're behavior, whether they're foraging, observing. And then they create a distribution curve, graph, and they solve it with chicken.
That is great.
And so a lot more of my labs are kind of coming through something like this
So
because
It's virtual labs, isn't it?
Absolutely.
well,
You're
physically got chicken.
You do?
Yeah, we got chicken. And instead of recording some notebook somewhere, you know, we got this tool right here in the spreadsheet. So the kids are becoming really comfortable with the spreadsheet and grabbing data, knowing where to line it up in columns and what to grab, spit out. So the graphs, which is a big deal, especially in science, so many other things too. So that's kind of exciting, but that's a big way to.
Chris, that's an excellent.
Is that in Canvas?
Well, this spreadsheet is just, the spreadsheet is just on numbers, which is an Apple product. But it could be on anything, Excel or whatever. And then the way I deliver it is through Canvas. So just like you would post something, you know, the kids are grabbing it in Canvas. And then when they're submitting this, they're submitting it back into Canvas, and then I help you. But yeah, with our time, any other questions just from
Questions for
our
Chris
K-12
before we?
You know, I just want to finish with, you know, I mentioned this table too. We got into this. I mean, sometimes, you know, I paid a lot of money for our change, expecting some things, and I'll tell you right now, we seem to have the data that's showing we are progressing. Our kids are learning based on standardized testing, things like that. But, so we're feeling good about that. We're going to hold steady or going the other way. But we jumped in with multi, you know, majority of us were pretty exuberant. Administration was pushing it. And so kind of the thing was digital everything. And so that was kind of the mentality of those first year or so. But I'm really pleased that I think after we got through the initial part of that, kind of backed down a little bit to this sweet spot. And it's not digital everything. It's kind of what projected a lot of times. Digital everything, and I get excited about it. But you know, they're just tools. To an end, it means to an end. But not every digital thing is the best, you know. And so I think what we've done is certainly overshot, and we back down and kind of settle in the sweet spot. We're still settling in the sweet spot. This stuff I'm using all digital, which is great. It's the best thing out there. But there's other things not digital, except the iPad side. So leave it at that. But if you have any other questions?
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for sitting in today. And that's the end of our session.
This is very good.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
I think
here.
this is a topic that I've always, I mean, I see my kids growing up, and they're exposed to these, they send home these, you know,